now it's even worse. It goes from, okay, you can pull a mummy towards you, and singe it a bit, to you could just like blow the top half of a person, I guess, and that's not okay.
Right.
Like, that's never, in any situation for really pretty much anyone, that's going to be a problem. So
Hello, and welcome to Kyber Shards, a D&D 5th edition actual play show set in the Eberron campaign world. I'm Philip.
I'm R.A.
And it's another Friday Q&A. So we're going to be talking with R.A. about Esri, and about, not mostly based on our questions, but much about this particular last episode, but just about the recent developments and happenings with the group. Before we get in, I just wanted to offer the obligatory social media plug. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on all the various social medias at The Geek Pantheon. We definitely appreciate likes and hitting the subscribe button and giving us a comment down below. If you'd like to let us know what you'd like to see, or if you have questions that you'd like to see on the next one of these Friday episodes, you can put them in the comments down below. You can also join our Discord, which is the link to which is in the description of this video, where you can join others in discussing Kyber Shards and other Geek Pantheon stuff, as well as just general nerdiness, and get questions in that we will, assuming we have time, take on the air. We have a lot of questions today, so we've, for the first time, started hitting that point at which it's hard to get through them all, but I think we will try to today. And if you would like to support what we're doing, we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/thegeekpantheon. In the meantime, let's get into it. So I want to ask my usual question. Since last we've talked with recent developments, is anything about Esri surprising you that you're learning?
when was the last time we talked? Man, I'm trying to remember what the context was last time.
It was around the Treehouse episode, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, this is going to be probably relevant multiple times. This session, that even though that was, what are we, 14 episodes in, I think, was the recent one, and we've recorded a couple more since, or a couple more than that even. We're only, I think, we're like on day 4.
Yeah.
And not like the 4th day we've played, like literally 4 consecutive days into the campaign. So it is exceedingly early for all characters, for everything that's happening right now. So it's all happening very, very quickly. So I think that's probably going to come up again. Nothing new that has surprised me really about Esri. I can't remember if we had met Gerald.
I don't think we had met Gerald last time we talked.
So it was great to meet Gerald. I enjoyed that. I think that's going to have some potential. Yeah, I mean, lots of surprises, but not particularly about Esri, I think, at this point.
Cool. All right. Well, we had lots of questions from our listeners on the Discord, so let's dive into some. So the first one comes from Leopard for R.A. So R.A., and I assume this is mostly directed at Esri, although I'd be amused to hear you answer it in your personage. So for R.A., how do you go about choosing who to spill all your secrets to and who you will not even give your name to?
Yeah, so R.A. The answers are fairly similar. There are very few people who
I
get
was going to say,
secrets.
I think that's not that different a question.
Okay, so Esri. I mean, it's easy, simple answer for him. The only people in his life that get secrets, in so much that he has. I mean, I guess the secrets at large, but are the people who already know his main secret.
Yeah.
Ari, Shade, and Pog. Those are the only people in his life that he feels comfortable sharing anything with, really. Geralt knows his name, but and not that we've covered this in game, but I don't know that it would come up. Geralt doesn't know where he lives, or if he does, it's not because Esri told him.
Right.
Geralt's not that. I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but Geralt's not that type of person. He's not gonna. He knows who he's dealing with. They know who each other's dealing with, so they're not gonna pry into each other's life outside of whatever business arrangement they have. That's not.
Yeah, I think the nature of those two characters' relationship is such that Geralt doesn't want to know where Esri lives any more than he would want Esri to know where he lives. Like, this is not relevant to their working relationship.
And
there's a sense in which the less they know, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And he doesn't know about Esri's group. Esri brought up bringing Shade into, take over some of his work. But I don't. It's not super fresh in my mind, but I'm pretty sure he didn't name drop Shade or even say.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think it was very circumspect.
It was very I know a person, and they would need some training. I think that's what he gave there. So, as for who he's comfortable giving, even his name to, pretty much no one. That's largely a very, very everything about him he thinks is a need to know basis, and there's just almost no one who needs to know.
Yeah,
and that's the way he would like it to be.
Yeah. So I assume that was directed at the fact that in the conversation with Tommel, Esri didn't deny the treehouse once it was brought up. Was that a
Tommel's a weird case
sort of thing?
So, the real secret Esri has Tommel knows. This is not a stranger. This was someone who was, if not a friend, at least a friendly face. Someone trusted from before, who they very much thought was dead, and now isn't, and also doesn't. Again, we sort of made this up on the fly, but it doesn't seem to be the same person. And he confirmed that in a lot of ways, and so there was probably a little more openness just because most of what Esri has to hide, Tommel already knows.
Right.
And he was very upset that Tommel was able to find them so easily. And the lie that Ari told, while Esri understands, he appreciates that. In the moment, Ari was like, "Oh yeah, I shouldn't just give things away. It's unsustainable if Tommel's already found that they're both alive, that they know each other, that they're in town together, and he found where they eat breakfast together. And he knows there's a treehouse. So, Also, Esri didn't go, "Oh yes, our treehouse where we live." All four of us together, and it wasn't like that. It was like, okay, well, what's the point in? Actually, if I remember correctly, what he brought up was, no, we don't have a treehouse. This rival gang of to yours has a treehouse. It's their treehouse, so you shouldn't come into that treehouse, kind of thing. I mean, that was kind of his only thought. There was he's panicking at that moment. He doesn't like anything that's happening there. So Tom was an odd one, and it's going to continue to be an odd one because obviously there's stuff going on there that we don't understand yet.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and of course, like you say, it's an odd one because this is something that someone we've established with whom you have history, even though we haven't played out that history. But clearly, as you point out, their behavior, this is not the person they were. Otherwise, you wouldn't have looked on them so kindly back in the program. So yeah, that does complicate. I didn't actually think about how that complicated that particular aspect of the conversation, as you were saying. That's interesting. Okay, so Richard asks, and this related to a question from Darren as well. So I'm going to put them both out there at the same time. From Eric as well. So Eric asked for R.A, now that Shade's mark is bigger, will he try to accelerate her training? And Richard asked, with the growth of Shade's mark, is Esri scared, apprehensive, or thrilled that his own mark could potentially increase? So, in general, what's Esri's feeling about Shade's mark growing?
So a good bit of that we haven't really unpacked in game. So I'll probably leave a lot of his personal thoughts about his own mark. I'll leave that I'm sure that will come up.
Sure.
I expect it will. As far as the training, we addressed this a little bit. Suddenly the training seems like just a terrible idea. Before it was, she's capable of inflicting damage. I'm capable of healing. I've got some ways to mitigate her damage. I think I can help her. I think we can make this work. I can be a training dummy for her. After watching her blow the side out of a building, he's no longer confident that that's the path he wants to take. It certainly complicates things. The whole thing about that was he's scared for her and them and others in this thing that she's not capable of really controlling yet. And now it's even worse. It goes from, okay, you can pull a mummy towards you, and singe it a bit, to you could just like blow the top half of a person, I guess. And that's not okay. Right. That's never in any situation for really pretty much anyone. That's going to be a problem. So you've gone, there you go. You went fuzzy there for a second. So training. That may depend on her at this point. He wants to help if he can, but probably done with sneak attacks. It may need to be a lot more regimented from a distance.
Startling her suddenly seems like a worse idea.
It's not. It's not a good idea.
So this next question, also from Richard, requires some context. I have made the joke in the Discord and maybe in the conversation with Casey last week, but I have made the joke that Esri has struck me as the Jim of the group, making the comparison to Jim in The Office, in that Esri is the person who is reacting like a normal person to the insanity around him, whereas everyone else just seems to be comfortable and at home in the insanity. And so I have this imagining of Esri every now and again looking out to the audience and going, so
yeah,
Richard
except
asks,
it's not, it's
yeah.
Anyone? No one's gonna help us.
Right. So Richard asks, will Esri truly embrace his gymness and begin pulling elaborate pranks on Ari, such as making Ari believe it's a different day or encasing all of Ari's personal effects in the Eberron equivalent of Jell-O? So I guess, is Esri a prankster?
That is a very interesting question. A lot, as you know, my characters end up being mild pranksters. Probably just because I enjoy it.
And we saw a little bit of that with Karl. Right, with Boggle.
Oh, that's true. I forgot. So yeah, I guess he is. That's probably just one of those things. It's like, it's me. That's not the character. It's just something I put in the character because always because it's fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe, but not like not now.
Right.
This is the sense of humor is quickly being drained out of him. Whatever sense of humor he had it's not in a healthy place right now.
Needs a vacation.
Need some rehab. Yeah. Needs a Mai Tai. Yeah, I mean, and if in a different situation, maybe it'll happen that he's a prankster. But yeah, right now it just feels like even jokes aren't gonna, like, even well-intentioned jokes aren't gonna land properly. Yeah. So I don't know.
And Richard asked, I said, this may have been covered in an early Q&A. I think we addressed this, but I don't know if we went into much detail. But could you elaborate on the Kalashtar and their relationship with the quarry and provide some insight into Esri's relationship with his own spirit? So we've touched on this a little bit. How does Esri feel about his to what degree does Esri relate to his, to Noshiaron?
Sure. So I'll repeat what I kind of covered before, which is, this is not a sort of relationship. It is an absolute, true, real part of who he is. It is a separate being that is also part of his own self. And that is true with all the Kalashtar. These aren't imaginings, or it's not even like, it's not like a god or a patron relationship where they influence you. Like, this is another being who is literally attached to his, I don't know if soul is the right D&D word, but his own spirit.
Yeah.
And so there's the aspect of it's just part of him. On the other hand, he was raised in a very tight-knit these are loaded words, so I don't know if it's this strong, but it almost cult-like commune kind of thing. This like urban commune where he was told and taught at all times that his duty to Noshiaron was the high goal of his life. That walking the path of light and helping the quarry, purify their, basically improve their brethren, like fix their evil, was his high calling. And then all of that got blown up, and now he has a very cynical approach to it, where Noshiaron essentially functions as his conscience, right? She's this presence that is always urging him to do good, walk the path of light, and any heroic impulse or action he takes tends to be because in those moments, that's when she's strong, right? That's when she's insistent. And he hates it.
Yeah.
It's very much a part of him, and if it could just not be a part of him at the moment, that would be preferred. Like, in his mind, you've got all of these other people, all of these people who don't want me to be a part of their thing. Go, just leave me alone. But of course you can't. Like, it's not optional for either of them. So,
right.
As far as, I think that covers most of it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's good. Okay. Darren asks, what color would your character's colors be? What would your character's colors be if they were a Magic the Gathering card?
Okay. Well, I last played Magic the Gathering when I was in middle school, so that would have been around the time of Revised, if I remember correctly. So, long time ago, in terms of I know that game's just like continued, and that's crazy.
That's about the same for me. I played Magic the Gathering a couple of times during a summer at Boy Scout camp because someone brought their cards and tried to teach us how to play. And I thought the cards were really cool, but I did not understand the game at all.
I got really into it for about a year until I got to the point where clearly I could not sustain the hobby monetarily.
Mm-hmm.
And, being a 6th grader, 7th grader.
Right.
And so basically just kind of had to stop because there's no way I was going to keep up. So as long as things have remained the same in the game, it's an easy answer. He's a combination green-black. Mm-hmm. So he's obviously he's a druid, and he's very in tune with life, but he's also interested in necromancy and the transition to death and all that stuff. So yeah, I think he's definitely a black-green.
Yeah, cool. Mia, who we want to call out as the wonderful person who hosts a weekly watch party for our show on Monday nights.
Hey, hold on.
On her Discord.
I have an idea. So most of the time, Casey and I haven't been available on Monday, but we've been injured. So our recent normal Monday night activity has been something we can't do. So we got to participate, come to the last couple. I thought, and I think this would be a great idea. Maybe she doesn't want to do this, but she's a streamer, right? So I thought she was going to be on there reacting as part of it. So if you want to get on there and actually do Mystery Science Theater 3000 this while you watch.
Oh man,
I'd love to see some actual facial reactions from people while they watch.
That would be hilarious. MST3K Kyber shards. That will be how we know we've made it when people are making parodies, or when people are parodying us in some way.
Yeah. We get an unbridled rage for an episode. Yeah. That'll be great.
So yes. So Mia asks, first one from Shiv. What does R.A. think? Shiv is her husband.
Oh, okay.
She was passing a question along for him.
Gotcha.
What does R.A. think is Esri's specific skill set in combat? Damage? Healing?
Yeah, so going back to the Magic the Gathering question, he is he treads a line. He's definitely a debuff damage dealer with some healing abilities. I mean, he's not, and I don't think ever will be a particularly powerful healer. But he has abilities to, keep people from dying, basically. And yeah, most of what he focuses on is that some crowd control, some debuff, and then a good bit of magic damage. Mm-hmm. We haven't had a whole lot of combat to refine that. Our combats have been fairly short so far. So we'll see how that evolves. I've never played a caster like this above 3rd level, I think. So once we get into the full expanded, I guess not spell book for a druid, but spell range, who knows? But definitely he's really our group is about the damage.
That's
our
true.
Fights may just continue to be quick because we're either going to be down or victorious.
Yeah. And then from Mia herself, how does R.A. feel about playing a character with a contentious relationship with other characters?
I'm fine with it. Mm-hmm. I enjoy it. It is good to be able to have contentions like that in a very safe place, right? This is Esri who has problems with other characters, not R.A. who has problems. So it's therapeutic in that way. And it's interesting.
Conflict is story.
I'm not necessarily aiming for it,
Right.
It's not like I'm I'm sitting there trying to antagonize. How can I antagonize Ari today? But there's a lot of it's just coming naturally out of the way these characters look at the world differently, and that makes sense. Like it. Why in the world would like extraordinary things be suddenly happening to a group of people, and everyone's just like forming like Voltron? Right? Why would we be to that place? I mean, maybe had we actually finished our training and we're an operational unit with experience, that would make sense. We weren't that. So, I'm fine with it. I obviously don't want it to always be just contentious.
Right. Yeah. All right. Laura asks, does Esri still think that Soren didn't mean to sell, I think this means intend to, as opposed to do it by an accident, didn't mean to sell them out? Does he have any theories on what was happening instead? This may also be one of those things where you only want to partially answer. I don't know.
I think I can answer this because it's been hinted at. I mean, it has come up directly. We just haven't really, like, as a group, sat down and talked about it, because basically everyone has their opinion, and I mean, we all have the same information, so he doesn't have any theories because he has nothing to base a theory on. That no one, they all have the same. They all had the same lens on what happened. But he certainly wants to think good of Soren, and it's just not straightforward to him that what Soren was doing was what everyone else or like was leading them to was what was happening to everyone else. I mean, Soren, if I remember correctly, was not over just them. Soren was a bigger wig and had other responsibilities. Why would he be leading them personally to liquidation? If I want to use the euphemism. That's what's in his mind. And it's not that he's certain of anything, but he thinks basically he thinks it's unreasonable to be certain of what Soren's intentions were, and he would very much like to think good of Soren. Soren was potentially one person who, despite what Tommel said, didn't actually only think of Esri as his mark. Right? Esri feels like he may have seen something extraordinary in him that wasn't just his mark. So
yeah, cool. All right, so we have a bunch of questions from Marvel. I'm going to ask them slightly out of order because I think it'll flow better in this order.
Marvel.
So
I haven't seen that username.
He's a relatively new member of our Discord.
Okay.
I say they. I actually don't know. First, the same question that I asked Pog. Is there a point at which Esri would decide to leave the group, whether for their safety or for his own? And would he have a hard time leaving any of them in particular behind?
In a strict character sense, yes. But metagaming, no.
Right.
Because you do have to contrive to some extent. We agreed beforehand. We have decided as a group to stick together, and we have our reasons for sticking together. So, yes, I was certainly, if there's plenty of things that could convince Esri that it no longer makes sense for him to be here. I don't think any of those things would happen.
Yeah.
And if anything, he would. In his mind, they would have to run. They might have to leave. In fact, that's already happened. Night one was
right.
Oh, maybe we need to go. but it wasn't at all, I need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not aware of any particular danger he brings to the group in terms of his past, or, I mean, there's not any danger in his past that isn't specifically also in his companion's past.
Okay.
So I don't think there's anything there that would cause him to leave. But yeah, basically it's like there may be a reason for us to leave, but not him.
Okay.
And I mean, he would have a hard time leaving them all behind.
Mm-hmm.
These are his people.
Yeah.
It is. They're it. He doesn't have any bridges left, and he's been in this situation before, and he doesn't want to go back to living alone on the street.
Right. Yeah, I mean, his other contact in town is Gerald, and that's not, someone who's going to let you crash on his couch.
Yeah, I mean, he can survive.
Sure.
It's not that. He knows he has skills, and he knows he can find a way to survive, but he doesn't have the ways he would survive don't involve people he trusts.
Right. Cool. Then, in your last Q&A episode, you mentioned that Esri has to be contrarian to Ari. When did that start in their relationship, and why does Esri feel like he has to counterpoint Ari? And I think relatedly, does Esri want to be the face of the party, given that he seems to try and take control of a lot of social interactions?
Absolutely not to the last one. As you saw in the Otiug, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Episode when the what was her affiliation?
The Knights of Thrain.
The Knights of Thrain. When the Knights of Thrain showed up, Esri says, "Hey Ari, you." Esri knew his one card to play in that interaction, and it wasn't convincing this person of anything they wanted. It was possibly manipulating their mind into letting them go. That was his one card, and he was holding on to it. No, he appreciates what Ari brings to most social situations. He's absolutely leaned on Ari on their journey to do the talking and get them in and out of situations. That's, in most situations, that's not a contention.
Right.
The one time it's really been so was the Donabella thing, and that was for completely different reasons. As for being contrarian, that I don't know when that would have happened in their relationship. I mean, probably immediately. Their personalities are just that way. And it's not necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying it is. It's just like it's oldest brother or oldest child, second child. Like you kind of have to be the counterpoint. Because if you're not the counterpoint, you're not going to be his minion. Like what are you? So it's more of a personality quirk than like an impulse, like something important. He's not trying to like balance out Ari for the good of the group. It's just like whatever Ari says, Esri's first instinct is going to be no, that's wrong. And then, okay, well maybe it's not wrong.
I think we see that goes both ways. I really enjoyed, because I didn't see it coming, when when Ari was talking to Pog a couple of episodes back, and says, "This is going to be hard to say. Esri might not be completely wrong." Like that was just very well delivered. But I think you get that goes both ways. It's not just Esri being contrarian to Ari. It's also Ari being contrarian to Esri, which I think we've seen play out in a lot of situations.
Just to be clear, behind the scenes, completely organic.
Yeah.
This was not planned, or even not planned, nor even like talked about or thought. Like it just kind of happened through conversations and who we thought our characters were. So
yeah, that's an interesting point to point out, is that you guys saw our session 0, so there were no conversations about character relationships before we started recording, other than you guys know each other and you guys trust each other, and that was more or less the extent of what I imposed, and everything else has just been developed through play, which has been fun. Related to that question, also from Marwell, is there something that happened prior to the campaign that caused Esri to have a lack of faith in the other PCs in terms of safety, presumably, or is that a recent development? Is that a product of the, as you point out, very strange last 4 days?
Yeah, absolutely. No, they have been living in town in this city for more than a year.
Yeah,
without any of these things happening, and Esri has been quite content with their life up until this point. Maybe not the most ambitious life, and sure, there are like unresolved things from his past that could have gone better, but they're more than just comfortable, or I mean, they're more than just surviving. They're in fact a little bit comfortable. Esri doesn't have really anyone telling him what he has to do, and he gets to spend most of his time out in the jungle by himself looking for plants. Like it's about as good as he can imagine his life being at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't a need to how was it phrased? About their safety? Distrust their...
He has a lack of faith in other PCs, in the other PCs, about their terms of safety.
I think, if anything, the problem is he's completely had faith in his group to keep each other safe. And those probably unspoken rules about all of this are suddenly just being broken all over the place, and there's panic. So I think it's absolutely just 100% a product of the recent events.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. This has been, as we point out, a bizarre set of 4 days after a year of relative calm, and I mean, the big difference here is that Ari Eric has established that Ari has been out kind of meddling the whole time, that Ari has never been really fully laying low, and Shade and Pog, being who they are really excited that things are happening, and Esri is seeing oh my gosh, everything we've built here is in danger.
Yeah, but Ari is meddling over there.
Yeah, not like right, yeah.
And he's doing it in a presumably subtle way, because the things he's meddling in need to be kept. He's not doing it openly, otherwise he wouldn't be able to do it. If I understand correctly, what he's doing. So yeah, it hasn't been a problem. I mean, I don't want to speak too much for her, but Shade's a thief,
right?
Presumably she's done some thieving.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe not. You can ask her that, but it's not that doing somewhat dangerous things or shady things, or obviously, are outside of his comfort zone. It's drawing attention to them as a group. That is.
Yeah. And then last question for you from Marwell. When Esri is interacting with other people, PCs or NPCs, it seems like Esri is trying to figure out how the situation can benefit him. Secrets in Karl's book, not wanting to help Belladonna when she's being chased, trying to set up his own pharmaceutical operation, etc. Is that a product of Esri's background, or is that something that has he developed that sense of opportunism in the past years?
Yeah, I mean, yes. It's been developed and refined over the years. Certainly, spending years on the streets of Sharn, opportunism was the thing he had. You see an opportunity, you have to take it, and everyone is trying to take advantage of you because you're weak, and a lot of the people you're interacting with are also desperate, and so you always have to be looking for the edge in something, and certainly being in a new place and having limited resources has in Stormreach has honed that and brought it back to the surface. And he has some military training, which, combat training is also the same thing. You're always looking for the weak point or the way to get an advantage. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's been trained and developed into him. What was the last part of that question?
That was
the first part.
The first part.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. Yeah. It's absolutely something I'm doing intentionally. He is definitely looking for, certainly what's best for Esri is very high on his list of priorities. That's no secret. I think.
Mm-hmm. All right. Irene, who acknowledges that she is super behind on episodes, wants to know.
We'll see you in a few weeks.
What do you think about playing D&D for an audience? Do you find yourself making different choices as a player, than you would if you were just playing at the table?
So far, I don't think so. I don't think I'm making any different choices because of an audience. I think, and I've seen this addressed in other, not live play, actual play shows and interviews with they all kind of say the same thing, is when you're playing, especially because we're recording it, especially, we're not playing for an audience. The audience is later.
Yeah.
And then some who have done like audience shows say it's completely different. Once there's an audience in the room and you get the actual reactions from them, suddenly you can't help but play to that in some way.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like unavoidable. So I don't think it's changed play styles. It's changed a few things in just etiquette, and like right now I have a ring light here, and if it's not as easy for me to just like get up and go get a snack in the middle of a game. Like it would be weird for the most part if just like someone disappears and comes back. Like, and it is also like, okay, guys, can we wait for a second? That's also a little weird. I mean, it can be edited out, but we don't really do that. So there's some things like that, and then the fact that we're doing a session, which is multiple episodes. So like we have these episode breaks in our session. That can be a little weird because, and you've seen with some of these episodes that go longer than we anticipate, like you forget, right? You're just like, you're in the flow of the game. And so it certainly has changed the overall experience to some degree, but I don't think it's changed anything about how I play.
Yeah.
Except that I was scared to do an accent when I started, and I regret it so much because I cannot find Esri's voice. Because I'm doing an American accent, and I don't know how to like emphasize his voice without changing it completely from mine. I should have just made him British and be done with it. It would have been easier, but I'm stuck with it now.
I can sympathize with that a great deal. Gerald's accent has drifted around a lot, and Lady Taurus's accent went all over the place in that scene, and I noticed it watching back. Which makes me like wonder, am I just way worse at accents than I think I am? Like, am I this inconsistent at the table?
Yeah, right.
I mean, probably I am worse at accents.
I mean, that's why I was scared to do
it.
Yeah.
Right? So
like, someone who has an actual British accent may hear this, and I don't want to offend anyone or be that like stupid American doing a bad accent. So
yeah, I just assume people are going to forgive me and go ahead. I will say I've noticed.
Sorry for my cat.
In like sitting in on lurking in chat during Mia's watch party, I have discovered how I can see how different it would be to have an actual live audience, because there are things that just went right by me in the episode that they think are just hysterical, like just absolutely hysterical. Or the reaction to Karl, like the belovedness of Karl, took me entirely by surprise. Entirely by surprise, and now I feel the need to, and I intend to, because he has developed into an interesting person, to work up exactly where did Karl come from? What was Karl doing before he was a bartender? Like, what is Karl's actual connection to the Swords of Karn? Like, all these things which were none of them.
Why is Karl?
Yeah, why is Karl? Because before the answer was because, well, somebody had to own that bar.
Someone has to run the bar.
Right? Somebody's there. So it'll be this guy, and he's going to be the most stereotypical bartender that well, actually, Colin described him, so he was the most, yeah. So that's on Colin, that's not me. Yeah. Okay, and then there are just a couple of questions that are for me, although one of them I would like you to jump in on, because I think this is, you are, for those of you that may not know, R.A is also my GM, and has run numerous games for me as a player at our table.
Been a minute.
Yeah, it has been a little bit. But, so Leopard asked to Philip, how do you balance the time dedicated to a split party so one person/group doesn't feel ignored or left out or get bored while you are dealing with the other side? Do you try to limit the time you spend with one side and switch often, or do you expect players to deal with the downtime while they have? So I'm going to start. I want your thought on this because you've done some of these things where we've been split into two groups at your table, so I'm curious what your thoughts on this are. I really like it when the party split. I've made no secret of that. I enjoy it a lot when the party splits, because usually more interesting and often more chaotic things will occur when the whole party is not there to think through it, and things tend to move a little faster. So I really enjoy a split party. In the most recent case, I probably could have bounced back and forth between the ship's cat and the marketplace. Part of the reason I didn't is because I felt like we hadn't really... Well, you got to remember, this was all one big recording session. And I felt like up to that point, Eric and R.A had sort of been cooling their heels sitting at the, imaginary breakfast table while Pog and Shade went and talked with Solarka. So to my mind, I was bouncing back to them and giving them a moment of the spotlight before I came back. I probably could have chopped it up a little more, but I felt like once we got into the conversation with Tommel, it would have, to me, it seemed like in the moment it would have seemed weird to break that conversation up and jump back to the very, very differently toned things that were going on in the marketplace. So that was why I decided then, usually I bounce back and forth, but the pacing of that bouncing kind of just depends on what's going on. I don't have a rule for how to time the pacing other than when there's a good beat. That's when you swap.
The only rule I can think of is, did they split themselves or did I split them?
Mm-hmm.
So if I set up a situation where they needed to split or they felt like they needed to split, then I see it's more on me to make sure I'm keeping the pace for everyone. If they split themselves, well, okay, I'm going to do my best, but if you didn't, if you wanted to be involved in every conversation, don't split. So we'll just go with whatever's happening in the game. I do think that it's probably more of a advanced player kind of thing.
Yeah.
To be okay with not being part of every conversation, and to understand that there are things your character doesn't know, right? That these things are happening over here, and even though you hear all of it, your character doesn't know what's going on. So honestly, I think the splitting is requires a lot more of the players than the GM.
Yeah.
I mean, just being able to sit there and observe and not inject yourself as much as possible. Even if it's not like a split party kind of thing, but where, you know, you need a character or a character needs to have a private conversation, or a dream sequence, or any sort of thing where, you know, that's this character's moment and it doesn't actually involve everyone.
Yeah.
That's something that maybe you know, a first-time player might not understand and might be a little miffed about, but as you play a little more, you get more comfortable with that, and it's more natural. Like, there's no reason 4 people in our case would just like be together at all times. It just wouldn't happen that way.
Yeah. And then Marvel asked, crossover question for Eberron Reviewed and Kyber Shards for Eric/Philip, respectively. When you're running a game with a PC who doesn't seem invested in the adventure you're telling, not a player, but their character, how do you create plot hooks to try and draw them into the campaign? Have you ever had to handle a situation in a home game where a PC left the campaign because they just don't fit in with the rest of the party story? So my answer, and I'm curious what yours is, because I know we were a hassle in going out of the adventure you were working from, that you were building our campaign out of. I know we were, or I felt like, maybe I just felt that way, but I felt like in Last Parsec, the game you ran for us, we were like herding cats sometimes. But for me in this context, and I have run lots of different styles of D&D game. The one I have found I like the best, and I think the one that solves the potentiality of this problem, because I don't think that's what's happening in Kyber Shards, for the record. I don't think I have a character who's not invested in the story that I'm telling, and I don't think my character in Eberron Renewed is not invested, but I'll talk about that in Eberron Reviewed, why I think that. But I think it's a perfectly good question, because I can totally see how it looks that way, and I'm interested to address it. The reason I don't feel that way is because I don't see myself as telling a story. I try, and I fail sometimes, but I try to make this something where we are telling a story. A lot of the things that have happened, I mean, to be real honest, the end of this little 3-episode set ends with a story beat that was the second story beat I planned. The first story beat I planned was the incident with the mummy and the incident with Donabella. That was the first story beat I planned. The second story beat I planned, you'll see at the end of the episode after the next one. Everything else that's happened in between is because the players did it. And so I'm not laying down hooks for them all the time. A lot of times they're laying down hooks for me, and I'm rolling with the story. So that's a very different, perhaps a very different look on it, or way to look at it. But that's what I think prevents that from happening in this kind of game, because I'm not telling one story and hoping that Esri, Pogshade, and Ari will all want to get involved in it. I'm presenting a whole lot of things that exist in this campaign, or in this campaign setting, and the players get to decide which ones they want to go after. It's, you know, a sandbox or a theme park, or however you want to talk about it. But worth noting, all of the big NPCs right now who are not like Soren and Falco, are NPCs that were picked out, or in the case of Tommel and Karl, actually created by the players. You know, I asked for who's someone you liked. There's Tommel. Casey told me that was R.A. R.A. named him Tommel.
Yeah, I think I named it. I usually get to names first.
Yeah, Casey told me that he's a blonde elf. I didn't know any of those things. Colin got to describe Karl. Somebody besides me named him Karl. but I can't remember which player it was. Solarka and Geralt were both selected. I provided some lists of NPCs for them to establish relationships with it. Solarka and Geralt were both selected off of that. There's a bunch of other NPCs that were selected off of that just we haven't gotten to. So I like the feeling that it's my players giving me hooks and not the other way around. I would like to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, for sure. It's, I agree with everything you said. I think, so I have a rule, and that I've learned over the years, and I don't have a pithy way of saying it for every situation, but it's basically like fun comes first. Mm-hmm. If you're designing a game, if you're playing a game with other people, I talk about making yourself responsible for other people's fun. And what that means is none of your preconceived ideas of how things were going to go should interfere with the fun of the table. So, yeah, if you present options to your players, or present an option to your players, and they just don't seem interested in it, or you bring an NPC in and they never go back to see that NPC, well, disappointing perhaps, if you worked on it, but like, okay, that's not where they're finding their fun. This guy that you improv'd, and I've heard other GMs talk about this, like, well, there's a famous GM out there on the internet who has some absolutely amazing NPCs, and almost all of them were on the spot improvs, people he didn't plan. And for whatever reason, the improv characters just become beloved. And maybe it's because they're a little more real because they're improv. They're not planned people. Right?
Come on, Ari, I'm not that famous.
There is a different famous.
I know. I understand. He's much
I'm trying not to name drop. I try not.
Yeah. No, I know.
As far as when we played, I also employ a lot of smoke and mirrors with my plans, in that I planned a thing over here and they didn't care about that hook. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. This encounter can be somewhere else now.
Right.
Somewhere else that they think is much more interesting. It's the same place. It's all made up. They're just on this planet.
Yeah.
Canyon over here, canyon over there. Who cares?
Eric has talked about that in some of his D&D videos of, just don't throw away the encounter. Just move the encounter to where they're going. That's... Yeah, because, especially with like an actual set encounter, like a combat encounter, or even to a degree an NPC. If there was an NPC they were going to meet that you really liked, so they didn't go down that path, you move the NPC over. As to your question, how do you create plot hooks to try and draw them into the campaign? My recommendation, if you find yourself in a situation where you've got a PC who's not engaged in the campaign, for whatever reason, it's just not feeling engaged in the story. Depending on the player, sometimes you might ask the player. You might be in a situation where you can just easily ask the player, "Hey, what's up? Is everything okay? Are you just enjoying being a supporting character?" Because sometimes you got players who just want to sit back and be a supporting character. My wife, when she plays, that's her preference. She doesn't want the spotlight. She is along for the ride. She likes playing with her friends. That's what she's there for. And so I don't push it. But if they just don't feel like they have a connection to the story, if that's what you discover is the issue, then look around in their backstory and make a story around something from it, or make a hook around something from it. Even a little thing from it. Doesn't need to be, I'm not saying turn them into the protagonist. But if I felt that Esri wasn't connecting to the campaign, I could have somebody from his old neighborhood show up. Not like even like come find him, but have him see someone from his old neighborhood. Kalashtar traveled. There's no reason that a Kalashtar from his old neighborhood couldn't get off a boat while he's down making a deal with Geralt. And maybe Esri would, hide in a crowd and let them walk past. But it would pique something. Like it would create some connection to that character. So take something, even something small, and build a hook around it. Give them an opportunity to engage with something that they obviously find interesting because they worked it into their backstory. So that would be my recommendation if you find yourself in that situation, or a recommendation. There's a lot of ways you could do it, but in a brief span of time, that would be a trick you could try.
So not exactly the situation, but something adjacent to this situation came up in our long-running game, home game, where we had been playing characters for a while. We were level early teens.
We were in the double digits, yeah.
Yeah. And because of various things that were happening, I started to have a hard time figuring out why my character was still here. Mm-hmm. My character's motivations and backstory just wasn't lining up with what was going on in the party, and as such, I was having to get more and more contrived. Like, okay, he's doing this, that's fine, but so I basically addressed it by saying my character doesn't feel like he is who he's meant to be right now, and he needs to leave the group for a while. So he was a monk. He went off to a monastery, and we talked about this. And it was never I'm retiring this character. I just need, as a player and as a character, he needs to go off to the side for a little bit. I need to play something else that will fit in better, and then when we get to something that makes more sense for who he is, could you guys just come get him? Like,
sure.
Will you contrive to come say, hey, guy, how you doing? Or we really need your help on this thing. And I feel like that was a really good decision. Ultimately, it led to, I got to play a different character for a little while. And I got to reset this other character and give him, he got another mentor and who kind of was allowed to push him in a different direction and give him some actual reason for playing, for engaging back in the story in a meaningful way to that character. So I think there's more intervention ways to go about it as well. Yeah. And so presumably, because this has probably some relevance to Esri, let me address that real quick. R.A, the player, is very much aware that Esri is going to be an adventurer. I've created the character and playing in this campaign to be an adventurer. That will happen. Esri doesn't know that, and Esri doesn't want that at the moment. That's not been his goal, and so neither he nor I know exactly how that's going to come about. But Philip and I and the other group, we're all aware that I am playing a character who is averse to the action in the short term. And that only works really because the rest of the characters aren't. Mm-hmm. If there was another character who was also being averse to the action, I would probably have switched already. Mm-hmm. I probably would have pulled that out of Esri. But it's just part of the story right now. As I said, it's been 4 days. Yeah. It doesn't make sense for any of them to be changing their whole outlook on life and the world yet. Mm-hmm. There's going to be plenty of coming to terms with things, and I'm sure, as is the start of a lot of hero's journey stories, they're going to be and have been pulled into situations that they didn't intend. Yeah. Certainly a lot of campaigns start with a group being hired in a tavern to go do an adventuring thing because they want to be adventurers. It's a fine way to start. That's just not how this one's starting. They're going to be forced into hard choices and ones that don't have ideal resolutions, and that's okay. But yeah, trust that we're all aware that it's not. I'm not trying to derail the campaign or show that Esri, that he's not interested in the story, or I'm not interested in the story overall. It's just where Esri is at the beginning.
Yeah.
And credit to the people around me who are allowing me to make that choice. It is an odd one. I absolutely, again, every advice I give is like, if you're a beginner, because while I've played a lot, I haven't, I've got 7 years almost now. So maybe I keep thinking, I only got a couple of years, but
no,
if you're starting out with a group that you don't, of people you don't know how to play with yet, or you're just playing for the first time, don't make this choice. Just play a character with clear motive. I have a character in another game. It's the first character I've ever had who has like clear motivations and reasons for getting involved in things, and it's like, oh yeah, this makes it so much easier. I absolutely recommend it. Play a paladin whose god is the god of glory, and you're set to go. This is more nuanced, and I hope I pull it off, but it's intentional.
Well, and I think we'll see all of the characters have to come to terms with their immediate reaction to adventure falling on top of them. Because, we look at Shade, and so far there was something in an episode, and I think it's already been released. There's some moment where Shade says something about her mark and is like, it protects me, it takes care of me.
That was when we were training.
Yeah. Because every time she's lost control, it's worked out. That's how Shade sees it. Right. But eventually there's going to be inevitably a moment where she loses control and it does not work out. Like, she loses control in a situation where it's real inconvenient. Or Pog tells the truth in a situation where the truth is not going to be beneficial. I guess we kind of saw Ari find himself trapped by his attempts to deceive in recent episodes, so maybe it's caught up with Ari.
Yeah, he did. He came out and said that, right? Yeah, I've learned some life lessons recently
about telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, the reluctance at the start is classic hero's journey, right? And then your aunt and uncle Lars get murdered by stormtroopers, and so you go. That's
Aunt Beru.
Yeah, but that was their last name. It's Lars. That's the last name. Owen and Beru Lars.
Oh yeah, I don't remember the last name.
I think it's Owen and Beru Lars. Eric will tell us if we're wrong, as will probably.
I look forward to
it. But Eric will see this before anyone else and tell us if we're wrong. So, anyway, we very much hope you have enjoyed this giant-sized Friday extra. We had a lot of questions, and they were interesting questions, so I wanted to get through them. And this has been an interesting conversation. And I just realized that we're over an hour. So, hope you've enjoyed this. Hope this has. Well, if you're still watching at this point, it's presumably been interesting to you, and we appreciate that. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, a comment down below, and if you want to chat with us, you can.
If you don't like it at this point, please stop hurting yourself.
That's fair. That's fair. A new episode will be out on Monday, and we'll have another one of these Q&As on next Friday. If you have a question and you're not in our Discord, feel free to post it in the comments below this episode or the next one that comes out, and I always go back and check them before this in case any questions come up, and we'll address it on the next one. But in the meantime, this has been Kyber Shards. I'm Philip.
I'm R.A.
Thanks for rolling with us.